Hi everyone, it's Tom here. Today I want to talk about a topic that we've covered recently on a video, but I want to go in a little bit more detail, and it's talking about our trading setups and particularly what it really costs to start out as a trader. We're not really going to cover like account size or anything because that is different for everybody. Everybody's going to start at a different level for that. But what's the bare minimum you need in terms of getting yourself set up with, a platform to trade? So we talked about in a previous video using a phone against a laptop against like a full desktop setup. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail there, look at costs associated and how you would grow it in different stages, and also how I did that. So, realistically, what do you need to start trading and how much is that going to cost you, more importantly? Because when I speak to new traders, a lot of them have ideas that, you need to spend, £4,000 or £5,000 on software to help you trade, a huge PC to set up and get your trading done with, multiple screens. The reality is that some of that stuff is useful, but it's something to work towards. So we're going to look through today kind of a realistic point to say, what can you begin with and what can you kind of progress towards? So yeah, guys, let's get started and jump. Just very quickly before we dive in, if you're still struggling with your trading or you'd like to know more about how mechanical edges are traded, I've put together a free video course for you that will map out and explain everything in detail, along with walking you through exactly how the mechanical rules actually work. If you'd like to watch that after this video, I'll pop a link in the description. You can click through and you can watch that straight away. So the basic expense you'll need when you begin trading is, what are you actually going to trade from? So if you've seen our previous video on what setup is required, we talk through the advantages and disadvantages of trading on a phone or a tablet, a laptop, and a full PC. So we're going to cover each of those in a little bit of detail here, looking at costs and what my recommendation would be in terms of spending on getting something that you can trade from. I'm going to use prices in the UK because that's where I'm based. You should be able to use equivalents though, depending on where you are in the world. A couple of quick assumptions though before we begin. I'm assuming that you already have access to the internet, so you're not having to kind of include that monthly cost into your trading. All we need is like basically some hardware and potentially some trading software to get started. So yeah, I'm not going to include kind of those monthly expenses. And that leads us really onto the first thing, which is getting started with trading on your phone or your tablet. Now, as I've mentioned on the previous video, I just don't think it's feasible to trade on a phone. So assuming that you've already got one, there'll be no expense there. I think we can kind of dismiss that because just using a phone on its own, it's pretty much impossible to trade from, to do everything that we need to do. Using a tablet, it's difficult, but it's certainly better. So, if we think about it, most brokers have their own app, running their platform through that, or you could use TradingView, and there's plenty of MT4 apps as well. So, there isn't anything to spend on there. You should be able to get an app as long as you've got some, I would say Android or iOS. They're going to be clearly the two most popular. I would focus on those. Now, in terms of the tablet that you need, I think it's important to have a tablet that's allowing you to connect to a keyboard, just wirelessly or by Bluetooth. So, and you want a tablet that's got a reasonably sized screen. So that really puts you in kind of a wide range. I see some Huawei tablets that are about £200. You can get some Samsung Galaxies, and even I think the basic iPads are about £200. So you could start there. You can obviously go way above that, in the region of over £1,000 for some tablets, which I think if you're looking to do it predominantly for trading, that's excessive because that money, if you had available, could be spent elsewhere essentially. So yeah, we're talking about a tablet that's, I would say, at least 11-inch screen. There are some smaller ones, but I think it's just going to be too difficult. You want like the keyboard accessory if possible. Just going to make your life a bit easier when you're filling in journals, I would say. And yeah, and getting something that's going to run relatively well and going to allow you access to those apps that you need. So Android or iOS would be my strong preference. You're not going to be able to use this on, say, a Kindle Fire, for example. But that's a good starting point. And again, as I said, in terms of software, you should be able to get the free access to something like Pages on iOS. And there's a few spreadsheet applications you can use on Android as well. So there's nothing there. So you're probably talking, let's say, around about $250 for a good entry-level tablet with the accessories that you need, and that should be getting you started. I mean, as I've said in my previous video, I don't think a tablet's an ideal place to begin, but if you're on a budget, that gives you a little bit of an entry into the world of trading, allows you to do most of what you would be able to do with a laptop or a desktop. So yeah, it's not perfect, but it's a good place to start. Next then, we'll talk about laptops. Now, I think this is probably the area that most of our traders will focus on. Laptops are more versatile than desktops, and a lot more popular, and they allow you to do quite a few things that tablets don't. You can access traders' platforms without having to use the app. You can do it just through a browser. You can download the program as well. I run IG. You can run it off the desktop browser, or you can just run it off a program you're allowed to download. And the same thing for most other trading platforms. I think a laptop just, it's easier to do the peripheral stuff as well. It's easier to do the journaling. It's easier to do the back testing. Usually, but not so much nowadays, but usually they're a bit more powerful than tablets, allowing you to run multiple programs. It's easier to flick between things. If you go between your journal and your trading platform, or for example, if you're one of our traders, you're going through the course, allows you to easier access between watching the trading videos and then going on to your platform to see the comparable trades. So if I was starting out again, this would be the place that I would begin. Now, talking about cost and specs, like with the tablets, it's not necessary to go for your absolute top end, your MacBook Airs, for example, or the 2-in-1 tablet to laptop combos. Also, I would personally, I'd stay away from getting a Chromebook. I just, think that running Windows OS, or just even running a Mac, it's going to be easier than running a Chromebook. Certainly if trading is your main focus on this device. You can make it work, it's just difficult. And I also think, the 2-in-1 tablet to laptop combos are necessary. They don't have the great battery life. They're a little slower as well. So you want to be somewhere in the middle, and it's going to cost you a little bit more than what we're talking about for getting into it with a tablet. Again, screen size, I would always go with a fairly sizable screen. It's going to be easier then to use maybe two programs side by side. So you're talking probably 14-inch screen and above. And really with that, you're probably going to be talking about £300 to £500 in the UK for a reasonable laptop. It's got a decent battery life. It runs fairly quickly, runs fairly smoothly. You might have to pay a little bit more if you're looking to get, say, Microsoft Office, for example, or equivalent. You can use Google Docs and Google Sheets, that's perfectly acceptable. But let's say another £50 to £100 on top of that. So it is a little bit more. Yet, you can find some great deals out there for laptops that are worth, under $250. Absolutely, if you have a shop around. But that's where I'd be aiming, somewhere in the sort of £300 to £500 range, which might seem like a lot. But in terms of getting set up and getting ready for trading, I think that's really where you need to be. And again, if I was starting out, that's kind of the region I would look for. Of course, if you buy a laptop, you don't have to use it just for trading. Hopefully you'll be able to use it for other things as well, so you can justify that cost. And if you already have one, okay, that's that ticks one thing off the list. But if I was looking to invest, that's about the price point that I would look for. Now, before we get onto the final section for hardware, which is looking at desktop options, I want to talk a little bit about using a second screen on your laptop. So, that's one of the big things that I kind of push for traders. Certainly when I speak to them on one-to-one calls, it's, look, loads of screens isn't always the answer, but having a second screen, I just think really increases productivity. Have your journal open on a second screen, have your main chart open on the first one, something of that kind of outlook. It just helps massively. It helps you from flicking back and forwards. It's just going to get frustrating more than anything doing that. So, get a laptop with a connection. Most of them come with a HDMI or a display port now. And get a second screen. You can pick up a cheap second screen for, £50, maybe even a little bit more if you want a nice one. Or if you've already got a tablet, use that as a second screen. But it's worth trying out because I think it does make a difference to the frustration of having to flick between journals, between your charts, maybe between any strategy documents you've got, and just take some of that stress away. So we've covered tablets, we've covered laptops, we've covered using a second screen with a laptop. What about, kind of in my mind, the peak of where you can be in terms of getting a trading setup? And that's using a desktop computer. Now, these are really kind of going, there's no upper limit in terms of price here. And certainly, when you Google trading setups and things, you'll see these setups with 6, 9 screens, which for some traders is pretty much vital for their trading. If you're beginning, you don't need that, honestly. I have 3 screens for my setup. That is more than I need, really. I could do it with 2. 3 is useful, but I use it for other things as well. So I think as a beginner, like I said, if you can get a desktop, like we talked about with the laptop section, if you get a desktop and have 2 screens, that's going to be the ideal setup to start with, if you're on a bit of a higher budget, of course, because this is where it comes into costs, looking at desktop versus laptop. And I think the laptop is the better place to start for most budgets. If you're pushing it, and if you maybe already have a desktop and you're looking to get 2 screens, it's a good thing to do if you're looking to trade quite seriously on it. If you're starting from scratch and you're looking at a desktop, I mean, like I said, the costs are really wide here. You can get custom desktops, which are going to go into sort of 1,000 to 2,000 range comfortably. I think reasonably though, picking up a desktop that's going to allow you to access to 2 screens, maybe even 3, you're going to be able to get for somewhere between £500 and £750 from what I've seen. And then those screens again, probably £100 each if you want large screens. I think it's important to get large screens. My monitors are, I believe, 24 inches each. You can put multiple programs on them and see them quite clearly. So realistically, I can have 4 programs running at once if I've got 2 screens, which is a big bonus as well. Yeah, of course, you're going to need all the other bits and pieces for that. You're going to need a place for the desktop to go. So think about that. Do you have a desk? Do you have a good setup for the desktop? Obviously, a laptop being a lot more flexible. So there's all those other little things to consider. I mean, if you were starting out very much from scratch and trying to set up like a home office with a desktop, yeah, you'd be talking about not getting a huge amount of change out of £1,000, which for traders starting out, the money could be better spent elsewhere. But if you have that higher budget, if you're looking for a setup that will stand the test of time there, then this is the way to go. Now we've looked at hardware options, let's have a quick chat about what software you need, because I see some traders out there suggesting various types of software, monthly subscriptions of things that are going to change your trading. And to be honest, I don't think there really is anything out there. There are some great platforms for journaling. There are some premium trading platforms you can subscribe to as well. We could look at Pro Real Time, for example. That's quite a popular one that I hear traders talk about. Even subscribing to TradingView's Pro platform. And, like I said, the journaling platforms and subscriptions that are out there. Realistically, if you're beginning, you can get by on just a free broker's platform. Whatever broker you pick, they usually have their own platform, or just use the free version of TradingView. You can subscribe to it. TradingView Pro is fairly useful. It avoids all the ads popping up. It gives you a little bit more functionality. That would probably be the only one I would look for. But don't bother investing in, a premium journal or anything at this stage. Just use a spreadsheet. Like I said, use Excel, use Google Docs or the equivalent. Get yourself set up like that. This expense you need to really go for is the hardware. Get a good trading setup, either with a laptop or desktop, or if you can manage with a tablet. And that's pretty much all you need at that point. And then when you start seeing the returns, you can look at using any of the pre-boom software that people recommend. But for the moment, and for 95% of traders, I would recommend just staying clear of that. So in summary, what does it cost really to get yourself started as a trader? Now, there are a few different levels as we've gone through. As I've said, the laptop area is the place that I would start, really. You don't need the high-end desktop setup just yet as a trader. And I think also trading off a tablet is just going to be unnecessarily difficult. So focusing on that laptop area, get a good laptop, get a second monitor. Don't bother with any premium software right now. Okay, it's going to cost you a few £100, that's fine. It's kind of the price of admission almost for getting into trading. You're going to have to spend something to get a setup going if you don't already have those things. But it's not, out of this world for most traders, hopefully. So that is where I'd focus. Like I said, go back and have a look at the video that we made on the pros and cons of using tablets, laptops, desktops to give yourself a little bit more info there on why a laptop is a great starting point. And hopefully that has really given you some insight into a realistic view on what you need to begin trading. As always, if there are any questions, anything that comes up, drop them in the chat, anything you'd like to see on future videos, And yeah, hopefully this has been useful, guys. But thank you for your time, and I'll speak to you in the next video.